Oh, hello everyone, and thank you for waiting. Welcome to Infogain's webinar, Making the Leap, using Generative AI now in marketing and sales. Next slide. Today we will spend 1 hour together. I'll take you through the first 5 minutes with some introductions and a brief overview about our company, Infogain. Anil Kaul will give an Infogain point of view about generative AI and how it relates to sales and marketing. We'll follow that up with a very interesting panel discussion with some experts whom I'll introduce in a moment, followed by a Q&A session. Now, everyone on the call, please use your Q&A feature to pose questions at any time. We'll gather those up and answer those during the Q&A session. Then I'll wrap it up. Next slide. I am so proud to share with you the webinar presenters that we have for today. I'd like to introduce you to Anil Kaul, Chief AI Officer at Infogain and founder of a company called Absolute Data, an advanced analytics and AI company, which was acquired by Infogain and in fact, which was recognized by Forbes in 2023 among the list of the world's best management consulting firms. Hello, Anil.
Hello.
And welcome to Josh Liebowitz, startup entrepreneur and with past experience as president of Seabourn Cruise Line, as well as chief strategy officer at Carnival, and previously the head of McKinsey's Miami office. Welcome,
Hi.
Josh.
Thank you, Kathy. Hi, everybody.
Okay, and Clarence Lee, Cornell marketing faculty and startup entrepreneur with a Ph.D. from Harvard Business School and engineering degrees, master's degrees from MIT. Welcome, Clarence.
Thanks for having me, Kathy. Hey, everybody.
Awesome. And then team, as I mentioned, Mark Jacobson, also from Infogain. He's the VP and head of strategy and product management for Infogain's Navic AI suite, previously spending several years with Forrester. Welcome, Mark. Okay, and next slide, please. Okay, now some of you on the call today are new to Infogain, so I'll just spend a couple of minutes telling you about us. We serve marketing and sales organizations at some of the world's largest companies. In fact, almost all of Infogain's work is what we call customer facing, where we are helping clients drive revenue growth. We are really strong in AI with a business focus, and then we combine that with deep expertise in innovation, experience, and cloud and data engineering to scale up. We feel we can match the Bains and McKinsey's on growth consulting. And then we also have the feet on the ground from the tech perspective to bring it all to life. Next slide. We have a history of bringing ideas to the table to help our customers with revenue growth. And the way we think about it is aligned with the way our customers' own responsibility areas and goals are aligned. And so you must recognize all of these areas: customer acquisition, of course, finding who the customers, the potential customers are, looking at total addressable market, identifying microsegments, and then starting to attack those using content in an intelligent way. And then customer engagement. Once they become a customer, make sure that they stay involved. Intelligent commerce, that would be exactly how you take the personalized profile to recommend different products and services that eventually help the customer transact and get out of the shopping cart. And I can tell you also on the sales side, I've seen other very interesting AI-based solutions to drive sales for sales organizations. And then lastly, that digital products and services. That's where we're doing like product exploration, maybe identifying use cases from other industries that we can borrow and then apply in our own context and in our customers' own context, building it into the product, and then following through with the product design, data, and engineering underpinnings that Infogain is very well known for. Well, that's a high-level look at Infogain. And now it's over to you, Anil.
Thanks, Kathy, and thanks for giving us an overview of what Infogain does as a company. I am now actually going to kind of switch hats and focus more on sharing some of our perspectives, some of the learnings that we've had for the next 10 minutes, and then looking forward to having a nice conversation with Josh and Clarence. First of all, I don't have to say much, but generative AI, of course, has been capturing headlines for more than a year now. The interesting thing is that what we've found and what is actually out there is that about 60 to 70% of employee time is expected to be automated through generative AI. So it's a very transformational technology. And McKinsey had actually done a study where they looked at where will generative AI have the biggest impact, and they identified 4 areas which will likely deliver about 75% of the value. And you'll see that sales and marketing is right after software engineering. So, all of us who are in the sales and the marketing space know that there is going to be a very large impact that will happen through generative AI. In fact, Gartner has this prediction of about 40% of enterprise applications will have embedded conversational AI by 2024, right? And 2024, by the way, isn't far away. We are just a few days away from that. So this is certainly, something that everyone expects to have an impact. So the question is not if or when, it is more about how. And this is something that, we hear constantly from our clients. The conversations that I have had is there's very few conversations about if and when. It's mostly about, what do I do? How do I do? And how do I do it now? And that's where we're going to be focusing on. Just to give you a little sense, we do work with clients across consulting, implementation, pre-built solutions around generative AI. So some of the pieces that I'm going to be talking about are essentially coming from the experience that we've had in the last year with a number of our clients that we've been working with. So let me share with you 4 points of view that we have about generative AI. The first one is that we believe that you have to have a dual approach to implementing generative AI. The first one is, I think something that probably everyone is doing, which is, target the quick wins. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit, and use the out-of-box services, the services that are available. Just use them and take a win. But at the same time, unlike in a lot of other scenarios where you would first go for the immediate wins and then start building on things on top of that, what we recommend is that in parallel, while you're targeting the easy opportunities, is to focus on reinvention of business so that you can really get the value that generative AI will deliver for your business. So if you're in marketing, figuring out how do we do marketing in a completely different way than what we have done traditionally. And this is where, models that have been customized with proprietary data become very useful. And this is where the real value and the real strategic value, competitive value will come from. The second piece is that you need to make sure that you're testing these waters with the appropriate technology stack. And our recommendation on that is to start off with the services, the generative AI services that are provided by the large cloud service providers. So, whether it's Azure, GCP, or AWS, they've actually set up generative AI in a nice way for an enterprise application to be built on that. So we recommend starting off with that. But in addition, you would also have to selectively test and use some of the open source models such as Meta's Llama. And there are, of course, a lot of other companies that are coming up with their own models as well. So we do believe that by going with the cloud providers, you are able to move fast, but at the same time, you're also creating something that is proprietary, something that is tailored to the organization to get value out of this. The next piece is around that, generative AI can create a lot of value at a lot of places, but, we can't take our eyes off the business fundamentals, which is, choosing the right case is still the way we would have done at any point in time. You need to make sure that you look at the risk tolerance. Don't pick up a use case where the risk is very high. If it's a customer-facing tool that we're building, making sure that the information that will come out of that is not something that's going to create a lot of risk for us. Second is wherever you find some jobs that are very intensive, either in terms of text or in terms of code, generative AI tends to give value relatively quickly on that. Third is to make sure that we have a human review process in place, because this is just a 1-year-old technology, and it's really changed and evolved so fast, even in the last 1 year. So it's very critical to have a human review piece in there to make sure that we are getting the right kind of answers. We have a check somewhere. So we, very strongly recommend and suggest that. Over time, I think that will go away, but at this point of time, that's a critical piece. And finally, of course, is business value. Nothing gets more traction than something that delivers business value. So don't take the eye off that. Look at what are the cases that are able to deliver business value, cases that will give visibility in the organization, and are able to create impact. So I think these are the 4 pieces that I think are still very applicable. Finally, do watch out for risks and implement guide rails for mitigation. So I've mentioned some of the things in here about what one should worry about. But at the same time, there's a lot of progress that has happened in a very short time since generative AI got launched or the large language models got launched across all of these areas, whether it is hallucination, security, bias. There is quite a bit of progress that has happened, and that's, by the way, and I believe that is the natural course of this technology. And I will, kind of close out with giving you examples of 3 use cases where we've had some experience using generative AI, and that might be something that kind of generates or that gets you thinking about from your organization perspective, what you could be doing. So the first example is actually our internal tool that we have built. So we have a tool called Sales Buddy, which our sales team uses to put together presentations for sales meetings. By implementing generative AI on top of this through a tool that we call Ask Navik, the sales team today can put together a customized sales presentation by just describing who they are talking to, what area they would like to highlight, and what kind of structure they would want. So you can ask and say that I am going to be talking to the CMO of a retail company, and I want to focus on customer engagement. Give me some case studies along with the current Infogain deck. So it automatically puts all of that together and provides you the deck. It also, by the way, provides a draft of the email that you might want to send along with that. And most importantly, it provides you a link to the original text from where all these pages have been pulled through, so that you can go back and look at that. If you want to pull something different from what has been provided by Ask Navik, you can make this. But it reduces the time and effort that goes into putting together a presentation to 1/100th of what it was earlier. And also, by the way, ensures from a marketing perspective that the team is using the latest documentation that is available, the pages that are available as well. And we built this on GPT-4 through Azure. The second one is actually a CPG client where we've created a custom platform to identify, grade, and track market risks. So it's outward facing. And what this tool does is it actually ingests a lot of text data. So it pulls information from magazines, industry magazines, from blogs, from patent applications, and so on, and creates a 360-degree view and a real-time insights into what are the category trends, what is changing among consumers, competitors, channel, and the company. It's able to identify emerging trends. It's able to identify potentially disruptive competitors and opportunities for innovation and category shaping. Again, a very powerful use case of using generative AI capabilities in a situation where there's a lot of text and short-circuiting the time, which would have taken months before you would have had a deck ready, and here you get it literally in seconds. And finally is an example which actually builds on something that we had done before generative AI got launched, which is using AI to help the sales team at one of our clients decide what product they should be selling or putting together at a particular account, at a particular client. So this is in the food service industry. So the tool actually uses data from 10 plus different sources, and from the basis of that is able to make recommendation of what SKUs should be carried at any level of granularity you want. If you want a at an outlet level, at a region, at a national. You can just create what you want. It does recommend on its own premiumization opportunities. Where can you put a more premium product in? It identifies competitive accounts where you have more than a fair chance of winning, as well as opportunities for brand growth where marketing team can then spend their dollars. So I just want to share these, 3 quick examples to kind of get our discussion started, and I will stop here. And by the way, if you have any questions on any of the things that I relatively quickly went through, please feel free to type those in, and we will come back to those at the end of the webinar. Okay, so now I would like to focus our attention on Josh and Clarence. So maybe I will start off with Clarence first. So one of the questions that I wanted to start off with was, how do you think marketing and sales is going to change through generative AI? And maybe I'll put like 3 pieces to it, which is, what is that you're thinking, what you think is already changing? What do you think will change in the next year or so? And what do you think will change in the longer run, right? So we have kind of these 3 different scenarios. Would love to get your perspective, and Josh would love to come to you right now. So please, Clarence.
Absolutely. I think, Anil, I love the slides that you just gave as well. I think that's a wonderful start, right, for folks to really understand, these are some of the low-hanging fruits as well as ways to reinvent our business going forward. So I'm going to build on that. I think I'm going to steal a framework that is from, I think there was a VC from Bloomberg Beta. And I thought he had a framework that was a good way to think about, for all the use cases that somebody might present, which one of these buckets does it fall under? So you can begin to think about, is this something that is a short-term gain for my business, or is this something that's going to fundamentally help me reinvent the business? So here goes the framework, right? For folks that are out there, any use cases that you're thinking about, ask yourself whether it is the loom, a slide rule, or is it a crane? Now, what does that mean, right? So if you think about what the loom does way back in the industrial organization, when industrial revolution came in, it essentially replaced a human being, a human weaver, to be able to produce some sort of output. And that output basically, in terms of just raw efficiency wise, you're able to 10x, if not 100x, or some sort of magnitude increase in terms of your raw productivity. But what you're doing is still the same output, right? And so that's a loom. The slide rule is this idea where, I don't know if folks in the room have used slide rules before, but back in college, that was in our fight song, right? So we're nerdy like that. So basically, as you know, the slide rule essentially is an early form of a calculator before the computers came out. And so what it does is that it augments a human being's ability to calculate really complicated equations. So that's the slide rule. Now, the crane is a technology where without the invention of the crane, we would not be able to build buildings that are 50, 500 floors, skyscrapers, essentially, reaching new heights. Whereas before the crane, we're building houses that are at 5, 6 floors. Yeah. So any AI invention can fall under that. So I'm just going to kind of take what you've talked about and kind of put it under that, right? So, Loom, it could be something as simple as one of the early use cases you talked about, like marketing mix model, for instance, where it used to be run by a programmer who's figuring out log model, what are the right X's that goes in there, what are the Y variables, how do you encode it the right way, what is the right ad stock transformation. It's very technical, right? It's very technical, and it's a thing where, what if you can actually give it to an AI to do that entirely for you? There are also things where today, if you think about on the creative side, if you're generating an ad, generative AI has gotten to such a good place where it could potentially replace the ad generation process of a creative. The question is, what happens when it goes wrong? That's when slide rules come in, right? And so these things where both those use cases I talked about, you could actually design it with a human in the loop feedback, where you have ultimately a data scientist or a business owner or a creative that's driving the ball. So instead of completely replacing that creative machine, that Gen AI that could be generating, let's say, a dozen copy that usually would have taken a team probably weeks to do, you could generate that in minutes and refine it within hours, right? So that's the loom and the slide rule. Now the crane is very fascinating. It goes to, Anil, what you were talking about regarding when you're at that stage of reinventing your business, what might that look like? So a classic example that's been thrown around for a crane is this idea of when you think about what just happened in the last few years in terms of a pandemic, and on the scientific community side, creating a vaccine for that. Vaccine creation process, based on my understanding of what I heard secondhand, is that it's essentially coming up with a bunch of variants of the solution, the vaccine candidates, and then you have to do the work of actually verifying whether that works or not. Right now, humans can generate that. That's what humans do right now. These scientists do that. But then imagine if you were able to tap into generative AI to be able to essentially hyperscale that process, so that instead of exploring dozens of potential vaccine candidates and simulate it, you can actually explore hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands if possible, before you even get to the human. So just as you do that, you can rotate that same exact process to the marketing and sales process. What are the best routes that your sales team should be going through? What's the right ad copy for the segmentation of customers that you're going for, right? And so all that really is a both planning and optimization problem that potentially could be hyperscale. So once you hyperscale it, what are the implications for your business? That's a very interesting thing that might be happening in the, beyond the 12-month cycle. And so on the 3-year cycle, then you think about this idea of, one last thing I'll say is this idea of open source versus closed source, large language models out there, right? So the GPTs of the world, open AIs of the world versus the llamas of the world that you put up there. There's Mistral in Europe, there is Cohere and Anthropic, right? So how do you think about the competitive landscape that these foundation models will go through? I think that's the big debate that's happening in the 3 years timeline.
Great, thank you, Clarence, and appreciate you sharing this framework. I really like it, the way you kind of put it in these 3 different tools that we could use. Want to ask Josh a question. Josh, you spent a very nice career in the marketing sales space, but also in travel, and I'm sure at McKinsey you've seen a lot of other industries. Where specifically do you think, in the short run, Gen AI, and I would say AI in general, will change and is already changing what's happening, and then go to the 12 months and 3-year cycle from your perspective? What do you think?
No, I'm happy to share. So, running businesses where you're obviously, from a B2C standpoint, looking to drive more customers, attract more customers, get the conversion, we're already seeing applications today of, let's call it, and I want to distinguish, by the way, in this discussion between Gen AI and machine learning, because a lot of people, when they talk about AI, they go straight to Gen AI. Like, that's amazing. I'm a salesperson. It's making my sales reports faster. But ML is the often untalked about critical component of this whole AI equation. So when you look at, for example, the fact that for an average B2C business, between 6 and 15% of its revenue is on advertising. Okay. And within that, you have working media and non-working media. The concept of going through, which is already in place, obviously today, through your vendors, whoever it may be, Google, Facebook, and using an ML process for learning how to optimize, and then adding Gen AI for automating the ad copy creation. The combination of those two, which is already in place in lots of businesses, but probably not enough businesses, is truly insanely powerful. Okay. Couple that with like an SEO where you go and you say, okay, why are we ranked 5th on an organic page? And you type it into a tool, and you talked about out-of-the-box tools for $79 a month, literally, okay? Because this is about to be this disruption in ad services, but $79 a month will give you an AI output on all your SEO fixes based on the top Google queries for the month, and it'll tell you what content you're missing. And then you could say, generate the content. So there's this insane opportunity to begin to rapidly automate stuff and rapidly close the loop, let's call it, right, on an issue. So as a head of several travel brands, I knew we had SEO issues, organic issues. It used to be, I'd say, okay, hire the vendor, take the month, study it, take another month, figure it out, take another month, implement it. Literally, without joke, I could go into a tool, and I don't mean to minimize this for anyone on the call, get the results and fix them in a rapid order. So I think we're going to see the cycle time of decision-making, the cycle time of content creation, the cycle time of optimization is already being done. and it's already going to be, well, I'll put it like this. If you wanted it in your business today, you could have it. You may or may not be there yet as a process of how fast you're going to implement it. But this stuff is there and it's ready, and we'll talk about more examples in a minute. But as a former head of a large global business, that's something which I can see driving much faster input and impact. And now I think more and more people are going to say, okay, how do I get this in place? What can I do to go get that done?
Great. Thank you, Josh. Yeah. By the way, I completely agree with you, because the example that you used, for example, on the SEO side, if you think of it, this could literally increase your productivity of dollars, by a huge amount, because one, you are able to do the right thing and not miss that opportunity. Second, you're able to do it much more faster, right? The moment an opportunity emerges, you jump on it. Please.
So there's a huge debate. There's a really interesting debate. I was talking to a Wharton marketing professor recently, and he said, we're talking about working and not working media, okay? So classic definition of, are you taking an ad, or are you actually applying it to media, or are you applying it to the back office production? And I was talking to him about the results of one of the businesses I was running, and he said, I think you're not spending enough on non-working media. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, well, when you look at the data, you look at a bunch of ads, and you guys have all seen this, like it's the Pareto rule, 20% of the ads produce 80% of the impact. But oftentimes we want to rush through the creative and put it all towards working media. But the reality is now, if you can generate in a low cost way through AI and through, content creation and the ML optimization, you can create so many different versions of what you're trying to communicate, get more and more targeted one-to-one, and all of a sudden the effectiveness of the messaging you're guiding out there, increases dramatically.
Fantastic. Clarence, I had a follow-up question on this. Josh talked about the impact more on the, let's say, the advertising side of the business. And so what are your thoughts on areas like pricing and, positioning and targeting, which was from a strategy perspective? Would you like to share some perspective on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think to Josh's point about how there's faster cycle time, being able to iterate more options, right? So if you think about this always as an equation, and that's how we studied it when we did research in academia. There's the X's that are you're essentially your inputs, and your Y variables are whatever KPIs you're trying to basically lift, right? Usually it's sales in some sort of transform format, or there's market penetration. Is it market share? You name your KPI, you put it on there. And so in Josh's case, he was talking about, okay, there's working media, there's non-working media. Under that, there is, stuff that you do digital, potentially, paid and earned, right? And then there's the stuff that you're giving to your agencies or your in-house, You can think about all this as X variables. Ultimately, what's going to happen is that once you have data on that, you're trying to see what are the copies of it, or the versions, the combinations of it, almost like a combination lock, so that one, you're not only figuring out what works, but you're trying to figure out what's the elasticity for each one of this. If you were to put X dollar into that, what's going to be the gain in the Y variable, for instance, right? So that exact same kind of thinking applies to pricing, except that pricing is just a continuous parameter, right? The problem with pricing is such that it's hard to get data on that, because anytime you change the price, depending on the setting that you're in, I think in travel and especially airlines, consumers are used to dynamic pricing. So that's great. You have tons of data. A lot of math could be applied to that to really optimize this. But in settings where, let's say you have a subscription plan, we all know what happened to Netflix when they decided to raise prices 10 years ago, right? So there are things like that where the ability to not only figure out elasticities, but the ability to run counterfactuals, the what-if analyses based on customer behavior becomes ultimately important. Okay, so that's one thing where I'm thinking about as you're applying to pricing, figuring out which retailers to work with versus not, what are the distributors you go with and not, right? These are discrete choices as well as continuous choices. You want the ability to simulate. Today, based on the market conditions, what would have happened if I raised the price by 10%, or if I were to go there in this region, right? I want to test this. And so this gets at then this need to go from descriptive statistics to predictive statistics, which and predictive analytics, Josh, like what Josh was saying earlier, is that and machine learning piece that's traditionally been around for, the last couple of decades. Yeah. Now, the edge of that, the next level is actually what's called prescriptive analytics, which being able to do what if analyses like that. Now, in order to do that, you need to go figure out what is the right way to think about correlation versus causation. And so cutting edge on the research right now, there are, of course, the gold standard of doing this is to run an experiment. But a lot of times in business settings, you can't do that. So what do you do when you have, actual businesses are running with tons of variables that are moving left and right? How do you then, and then you have people who are doing correlational kind of analyses versus people that are running A/B tests, that are running experiments. The good news is that what's coming down the pike right now in terms of the research on the academic side is there's a lot of thought in devising algorithms to piece together the insights that you might have from past experiments, as well as past observational data. So this can guide what the experimental design going forward in the future, so you can get a causality. Now, what if that process itself can be augmented with AI? All of a sudden now, you not only have a way to get feedback loop on the data that you've tried before, but also as you're designing and coming up with those alternatives, the alternatives themselves are not just, ad copies. I'm now talking about business strategies that are then could be tested, right? So then that's probably what's going to happen in the next step. But then imagine that once we get there. I think what the equilibrium is going to get us to is that, let's say right now, you and your competitors all have AI now. They're doing that, let's say. They're also trying to think about how do we do correlational analysis versus causation analysis. So how do you get that extra edge? This goes back to what Josh was talking about, that Pareto rule, right? Essentially, how do we focus? How do we not only do, but also figure out what should we be doing? And so this, I think, is where a lot of the frameworks, Josh, we were talking about Wharton, right? And I know, like these business schools as MBAs, we're taught a variety of frameworks to help us simplify a problem, to focus on what matters, what doesn't. I think the ability to go to those frameworks in a low-cost way, to understand how to deploy it for the context that you have, that will become a key edge to whoever wants to compete. It could mean becoming leveraging a partner like yourselves, right, that understands those frameworks, to all the way to, I wouldn't be surprised, and this is something we're working on in our startup, where imagine being able to deploy those frameworks via an AI that you can leave behind as well, right? And so the world's there's a lot of greenfield possibilities for here, but I think those are certain capabilities that can guide your organization to win in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, in fact, Clarence, there is an interesting concept called a digital twin of a customer.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've heard of that before, but it's actually a new concept that, good reasons we actually had pioneered in 2017-18, where what you do is you take all the information that's available, create a digital version of every customer that you have in the market. And I was just thinking about that simulation that you're talking about, where before actually taking an action, you can simulate on your customers in a way, or your consumers, and know what the outcome will be. So that as you take your decisions, you have a lot more confidence in the decisions that you're taking. And we've done this with one of our clients, where the product launch process is usually fairly long. It takes a couple of 2-3 years before you get the product in the market, is to create a digital twin of the consumers with their preferences for various features of the product, and then test out the products. So you don't have to run the concept test anymore. You don't have to go and do a market test before you get to the final answer. You can actually run through that and not only find out what the sales in the first year will be, but how many people will buy the product again, all of those things. So again, you still have to go to the market and test it, but it just cuts short a lot of the time that would have taken to figure out these things, because the data exists, right? Every large company has been doing research and collecting data for years. It's just sitting somewhere and not getting used. So that is a very good example of.
I love that point, Anil. I think so. This is when I was doing my Ph.D. I had the chance to do essentially a version of that for freemium customers. At the time, I was studying how some of these early Y Combinator unicorns, when they were babies and they're using the freemium model, how do they grow to become the juggernaut they are today? And there was this idea of today, when you're doing pricing in a freemium setting, there's the free tier, there's the premium tier. How do you simulate what would happen and how soon they would upgrade versus not and share, right? The network effects and all that. So there's a whole large literature on how to do that in different settings, in SaaS business models and CPG interactions and So love that idea. One thing I want to add to this conversation too is that in my journey, the last almost decade, doing research in this area, at some point, what you'll find is that there is a need to either get more customer data across departments or across organizations. And something that becomes a blocker to creating those digital twins is actually privacy. And so how do you enable privacy preserving versions of these, where you can estimate these models without needing the real customer data? There's also active research going on right now using techniques like synthetic data, federated learning, right? So to Josh's point, before generative AI, these were the generative AI before, like just a couple of years ago. And so there's a huge niche field that is blooming, right? That's going to be becoming more mainstream in the next 5 years that enables privacy preserving versions of what you're talking about.
Great. So yeah, so there's, absolutely a lot going on and a lot we can do. I would like to change that a little bit and go to Josh. So Josh, how do we make sure as an organization, and this is for folks who are attending and others, that we don't get left behind? How do we get started? What should we do, given that there is potential to change so much? What do you say about that?
Yeah, I'll start with the way I think about it is each business, whatever business you're in, whatever business the participants and listeners are in, you're going to be driving for, let's say, 3 or 4 drivers of value in your business. Okay, in the travel business, it's literally filling up the yield. How many people you bring on your planes, your hotels, your boats, whatever it may be, your ships. You want to drive as many of those as you can. You want to make the people happy so that they return, and you want to operate safely and effectively. Okay, now we're in the marketing sales conversation here. So I feel that anyone running a business today, they should have a shepherd, okay, an AI shepherd. Someone that they turn to, they rely on. They're going to set strategy, okay? Most strategy, and I've been doing strategy work for 30 years. Human insights power strategy, okay? So we're going to call it the HI, the high portion. But when you combine human insights with AI, you get high plus AI, okay? High to AI. The shepherd is the role of the person or the organization that's providing you with a roadmap for how you're going to use the power of, to Clarence's analogy, the crane, to build taller buildings, to sell more tickets at a higher price, to fill your hotels, to offer better service. And I think it's incumbent upon you to find the person or the group that's going to help you through that. I thought your point on out-of-the-box tools was fabulous and fascinating. There's an innovator's dilemma here for every service provider in the world, from McKinsey to BCG to the large ad agencies, maybe even to Infogain, I'm not sure. The innovator's dilemma is that some of the out-of-the-box tools are so good that in many ways they are the more efficient, more effective way of getting stuff done that used to be at $100 an hour fully weighted basis with 300, 400, 500 employees working on stuff. So the shepherd has to be a neutral shepherd that's going to guide you through the decision making around how to get this stuff done. In addition, whatever service providers you're staying with, even if they're legacy service providers, especially if you take something like Google. Okay, so most advertising goes through the Google platform, okay? Whether display or search or what have you. That platform, if you were a small pizza shop owner on Main Street and you wanted to drive more traffic, you'd go onto the tool and fill out all your parameters and you'd let it run with an ad budget of $100. If you're running a $100 million a year budget for a startup craft beer company, you hire someone else to do that. Well, why? if you went on there and you spent 5 hours, 10 hours doing it, you're going to achieve the same interface with that tool in order to get a certain result. So the out of the box point is massive point, right? And it's like how you're setting up yourselves to drive that out of the box tool to its maximum effectiveness. So the way I think about it is the HI, the human insight, is setting the strategy, setting the top level. The AI is getting you there. And it's that shepherd, whether it's Infogain, whether you're using, the insights of someone that's been through this before. I've certainly seen a lot of this in my strategy work. I'm sure Clarence, you've seen it, but like find those people that you trust and set that in motion, and push the envelope hard, because this is like, I don't think you have to be in like a crazy foot race, but it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot more effective than the way things have been done before, So yeah, that's that roadmap.
In fact, just building on Josh, what you said, I have a question for Clarence. I think one of the dilemmas that a lot of folks face today is, do I spend a good amount of time understanding AI, understanding how large language models work? Or should I just focus on my business and find tools that will help me do what I need to, like the shepherd that Josh talked about? Should I actually figure out how to build it, or should I actually just wait for others to build it and just be the person who focuses on learning how to use those tools and getting value? What's your perspective on that? Where should, as a business person in an organization today, I spend my time?
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine if you sample every 100 folks out there, you're going to find a spectrum. Yeah, some are one end versus the other. I think it really depends on, how much do you want to win, and what's your time horizon? Yeah, today, we all know the puck is going here. We all know that that everybody's trying to find an edge, and it requires you to understand some type of knowledge. I think I want to rotate your question a little bit, right? It's like, I think most people out there want to know, but it's about how effectively and how efficiently can they get that knowledge in their heads and understand it. And so I think this is why I want to bring out, I would double down on Josh's point about having a shepherd. The shepherd is there to provide the roadmap, but as they are creating that roadmap with you, they're probably asking you the right questions to even beginning to think about. It's not just, I'm going to learn about AI in vacuum, but that shepherd is asking, be able to answer questions like, how do I fit AI and Gen AI into my MarTech stack, right? There's probably a sequence of questions that shepherd's going to ask you where, well, tell me about your current business right now. What is the most important KPIs to you? What does growth look like? How's your current organization is it organized, right? The human factor, in order to get to the human insight, not about the customers yet, but about your business. You do that first, then you think about what's the right way you could and put AI into that before you begin to think about what is the out-of-box type of solutions you would have. But let's just take that thought and that interaction, that one shepherd into maybe a multiplayer game, right? I find that a lot of my Josh, I don't know if you find your classmates from HBS do the same, but I find that a good amount of my classmates from business school, the way they sharpen the saw, like what Steve Cubs said, is actually through a team sport. They would get together with a group of other similar general managers or marketers or executives. They're also roughly about 5 to 2 years around where their stage of career is. And as a cohort, you figure out, given my problem, what are people doing there? Right? How are people attacking this part of the tech stack? How are people attacking this part of the business problem? Right. So that becomes more, I would say, of a thriving and life-giving way of tackling this problem, where it's not just you with your shepherd, but rather you have this team of people that you already know and trust, and you're tackling that together. And I think that's a great way to actually stay on top of that. The last thing I'll mention is this idea of being able to see maybe a little bit longer what's coming down the pike in terms of technology. So if you think about the current AI development as a stream, and it's a fast-paced stream, right? A lot of stuff is just coming down. In order to see what's coming down the stream, you want to look upstream, right? Maybe you go up to the mountain where the stream starts. Well, where the AI innovations are actually starting is in academia. So if you look at all the schools that you guys might have gone to, And the way that the computer science departments are actually, organized, it's based on machine vision, natural language processing, algorithms, security, and so forth. And there's top researchers that are publishing in those specific areas in the conferences. So those are the places where, in those conferences and journals, where the original transformer was invented, for instance, back in 2017. So if you just spend even 5% or even 1% of your time every year, just take a look at these key conferences, what are the titles, what's coming up, right? And then use that group of yours to kind of just say, divide and conquer this. Hey, what's coming out? Does it make sense? Do we know the Ph.D. that we talked to as part of that shepherding process? You'll be able to see where the puck is going to go, because that's the source where industry is drawing from.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, no, I think, the example that you use of a stream, I think this is like more than a stream these days, right? In fact, probably best uses of AI today is to just summarize all the new things that are coming in AI.
But Anil, let me add on to what Clarence just said and something you said. Okay, like you have, I think the way you're going to bucket this is like this. What's the stuff that I can do now that's relatively familiar that I can add and put in my business today? Okay, there's a bunch of stuff that sits in there. SEO, SEM. There's stuff that sits in there now. Okay, and that'll add profit now. Then there's stuff that's like, not as familiar to us and probably add some value in the medium term. And I might want to pilot that. Okay. Maybe a company like iDoMo, which is personalized video, you're going to pilot how that interacts. A lot of companies are doing it at scale, but maybe you want to pilot. Then there's something further out, which is like not familiar to us. I want to learn more about it. Digital twins. Okay. I think it's okay in your business. And I saw a question come in on the chat, like how you would apply this in the hotel space. Okay. And Anil, if you're so, maybe I just take a second and riff on hotels. Okay. It's business I know a decent amount about. So where would you apply today, AI in the hotel space? Well, in that same framework today, if you run a hotel or you own a hotel, immediately, I think in the SEO, SEM space, you can do your AI driven audit on how you're doing in terms of traffic generation to that, whatever your series of landing pages are and look like with respect to that, and how you compare to your own, how you compare to the channel, who's winning which types of terms. And a lot of what I'm describing, maybe you're like, oh yeah, we've been doing that forever. Yeah. But if you haven't done it with the latest sets of automated insight tools with the AI overlay, and you've done it, not call up the agency and ask them for a report. You sit down and do it, and you see the insights that come out of it. That's where you're going to be, I think, able to see the difference between something where 8 people spent 30 days on it and one computer spent 30 minutes or 5 minutes, literally cranking out the output. And that spectrum of value that can be added in a short period of time, your job as a leader is to figure out how to take that little spark and actually spread it inside your business and be like, this is the new way we're going to work. And your shepherd is either going to be your existing vendor or someone else, or maybe you set it up in-house. But as a leader, that's your responsibility. So I will give you one quick example. If you're running a Wall Street trading desk 30 years ago, okay, actually go 30, 40 years. Remember the movie Trading Places? They're in there with the cards and they're trading and they're making trades. Okay, fine. That's the way you used to do it. Clarence, IBM, $20. You want it? 22, 23, bid ask. Okay. Then you had computers. This is fascinating. Now it's automated, right? So the automated, a press release comes out and it's dissected and they decide to go long or short. So on the marketing sales spectrum, a lot of us are still in the upfronts. It was a bit, okay, the Friends is coming out. We're going to bid this much. And then it went a little more automated. And then you have programmatic and all this stuff's going on. So as a marketer, you want to say, I need to get to a place where I'm even more, in this automated world. Now, the HI part of the HI AI, maybe the human insights around creativity and human sensation and communication. But man, that AI is going to power what you do. And I think you're going to want to set your sights there.
Fantastic. So I think we've had, and I know we can continue for quite a while with this discussion. Very, very interesting. So looking at the time, I'm going to ask Mark to come in and tell us what are the questions. Please pick up, share what are the questions that people have, and we'll be happy to answer those.
Excellent. Well, thanks to each of the three of you for a great conversation so far. We have some very interesting questions coming in here through the chat, and I want to encourage everybody to, don't be shy if you have any other questions to please share them with us. So the first one I'm going to start with was around how the MarTech stack is so complicated already. Sort of where does generative AI kind of fit into it? And I'm even going to kind of put my own little spin on this, which is sort of, it's one thing to kind of do sort of generations, right, inside of a large language model in some kind of silo, but how do I sort of then fit that actually into kind of my business process where I can actually execute on what's happening in the context of marketing and sales? And sorry, let's start actually with Josh on this one. Josh, since you've recently been in the trenches running as a marketing practitioner, running a marketing team, and then let's hear from Clarence.
Yeah, I mean, look, the interesting thing about this industrial revolution, okay, different than the past ones, is that the incumbents are in a unique position to have the capabilities of AI and ML embedded into their existing products. So you all are probably using some version of Salesforce, or you're using some version of, we talked about the Google ad stack. So it's in your MarTech stack. It's already there. And you're probably at some level already using it. I think you just need to get inside the details and figure out to what extent are you fully using it. And so, and how well is it driving what you need. So the existing tools have it embedded in there. And my guess is a bunch of the people that you work with are already using it. In fact, you can typically tell when someone creates a research report with Gen AI, there's a certain pattern to the language. You can see that they've actually used it to kind of spew out a whole bunch of, interesting adjectives and sentences with a 3-part structure for the things that are important, and the howevers and the ifs and all the language construct that AI does so well. So it's in the MarTech stack. Obviously you can turn these experiments on. I think where you need the help from it's not, I don't know what you'd call it. It's not a systems integrator. It's next gen integrator, like an Infogain, is where you want to apply your own content and run AI models on that. Like all the insights you have about a hotel chain or a certain thing that allows you to run the AI models on your own proprietary data, which I think is going to be a place of extreme power for companies. And there, I do think you need the help, and I think there's a lot of value in that. There's like that old adage, like, is Airbnb, or Uber, is it a ride sharing app or is it a tech company? Is Amazon a retailer or a tech company? Is a hotel chain a lodging player or a tech company? And maybe you can be both. But certainly a lot of that stuff sits today in the stack, and it's implementable. And so either get your digital shepherd, do the experimentations, bring in, a strategy group or an Infogain to help you really get that right.
Yeah, Josh, you're, by the way, very right about it, because I think what I have been in a way surprised, I would say pleasantly, is the speed with which the incumbent companies have brought in generative AI into their products. Like Adobe is a very good example of that. If you have used or tried their Firefly tool, you would see how good it is at creating new images, new text, and so on. So I think in that sense, this has been very different from the past technology changes that have happened, where the incumbents would always be slow in adopting. So the most of the innovation would come from smaller companies. So what I'm noticing is that most of the incumbents have actually been pretty good. But there are some companies that are, of course, coming up with some new things, which probably at some point of time will replace incumbents. And I take a good example of, you talked about Salesforce CRM, because, the generative AI is more about making the current CRM better. But there are companies that are actually thinking about this whole stack in a very different way, where you literally are going to be creating a CRM that makes decisions about each individual customer independently, or like at that minute customer level. But yes, we would have to wait for those because they will take a little time to first get ready, tested, and be ready for going out. But that is kind of what I have noticed.
So Anil, I just want to build on that for a sec, because I think this MarTech, we shouldn't go off it so fast. Because in a company with decent size and decent scale, every new tool you add on is a opportunity and a risk, okay? And you have to ask yourself, are you actually trying to make this the scalable solution in your company where you're going to upload customer data? Like iDoom was a good example, which is a personalized video platform. You're going to start uploading your customer data, your transactions, your files, and you bring it together. Then you have privacy reviews, back to what Clarence talked about. So like, it's not so simple. You do want to align on where you're going. And I do think getting the help to implement it is valuable. So I think it's the difference between the out of the box stuff, Anil, you talked about, and then deciding what you're going to make to be truly at scale. Okay. The proliferation of startups with the .ai surname is insane. Okay. For every one personalized video provider, there's another 20. Okay. So I think there is something about not getting overwhelmed with the items on the menu, defining a strategy. Where do you want to experiment? Who are you going to partner with? And, and making that great, right? I'd rather have 3 great executions than 40 so-so pilots,
Yeah, I love those points. And I think to build on that point about the MarTech stack, I would actually flip this question to the reverse of, right? It's how do we not do that, right? And in order to think about what's the wrong way to do this, I've heard generative AI compared to a previous technology, not to the order of like mobile. I'm talking about the internet. So if you just did this exercise, and we do this with our clients, right? Like we basically say, okay, today that question, how do I fit AI and Gen AI into my current stack? If you just rotate real quick, how do you fit internet into your current business? If you ask that question, before, all of a sudden now it's like, oh, okay. Like imagine the reaction you just got. You almost have a need where you want to go deeper. It's like, well, what do I want to do that use the internet for, right? What is the thing that I care about? So that step of actually, instead of just putting generative AI just for its sake, and you think you need that shepherd to guide you through to think about, okay, well, today, your business, what are you trying to do in terms of your outcome? Begin with the business first and identify what are the areas of high leverage points, and you start in those points first. Because if you just random shot, just be able to say, okay, cool, we did generative AI. One, you're not going to get results. Because what's happening, to Josh's point, there's so many vendors out there. You're going to get a lot of noise in the next 24 months. You don't know what's good, what's not, what's technology built on. There's a lot of buzzwords related to that. It's a bit of a wild west out there. So I think I would start by asking, okay, well, that's the wrong way to do it, right? So the right way to do it would be to think about today, when I'm having that conversation with the shepherd, what is it that I want to do to drive impact? And what does impact look like for my business in the next 3 months? And then you design the pilot around that. And I'm going to hop over to, this is related to the question about the experiments, right? So it's in the same very similar way. At the end of the day, the point of experiments is to identify you're going to do something in order to drive some sort of outcome. You begin there. You say, okay, today, what is that high leverage point that I'm trying to test in order to drive my sales or my penetration, or let's say engagement, let's say. And then based on that, you can then think about, okay, I spend a lot of my money on, digital marketing. Okay, so which channels? And then once you have that set, then there's old school ways and new school ways of doing that, right? So you can, there's a company called Optimizely, for instance, that started way back, and their story, rise to fame, was to help Obama win the election. That same tool could help you think about how do you design your initial experiments. But to Anil's point, if your main spin is within Google, and most people are, right? Google and the Meta ecosystem, they already have built-in A/B test tools, experimental tools that are in there already. You could start there, and you could start small. But then don't just start because you're just trying to do it. Going with a plan where it's saying, if I were to do this, it's just I'm expecting to have this kind of lift potentially for my outcome that I'm going to drive. And then based on that is going to drive which vendor, how big the experiment, what's the end size, what's the power you need, that falls through.
Excellent. I think we are really just about time. Can I sneak in one more question, Dr. Kaul, or should we conclude? Okay.
Yeah.
So I love this conversation about the shepherd, and we've seen this over the years, right, in analytics, sort of this idea of whether the analytics team should be embedded in the business unit or some kind of, sort of standalone group. So in the context of sales and marketing, Clarence, we'll start with you. Should the shepherd, how well does the shepherd need to understand sales and marketing in the context of the business?
I think it's absolutely crucial for the shepherd to both know the business side and also the tech side. And that's why they're hard to find. Yeah, because they will serve as a bridge. Here's my experience, and then I'll be curious to see, your experience, and Josh too, right? In my experience, and the larger the company, the more true this is. The last decade, in terms of cloud implementation, digitizing the business, and all that, I've seen companies spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on migration to the cloud, getting data science, hiring data scientists, and doing all this stuff. And then what you get at the end of the day is dashboard galore. And hey, it's because there's a wide variance of needs for business on the business side. But what I almost always hear on the business side when I talk to the brand managers, the product managers, the people that are driving the P&L, let's say, is that, oh my goodness, I'm overwhelmed. I just want a car dashboard or something that drives my business. Here are the 5 key questions I want to ask. But instead, I get a space shuttle that's going to get me to Mars. I don't need to get to Mars. I just need to know which off-ramp to get off on this highway, right? So that's the symptom I'm seeing right now. What's exciting going forward is that UI of complicated dashboards and things like that could be solved in a technical way using a conversational agent. But if that shepherd doesn't know what are the key business metrics you're measuring and why you're measuring that and how that impacts your bottom line, so they can be able to say, hey, when you're measuring these 3 things, have you thought about this other thing? Because I've seen in other companies similar to yours, this is how they're thinking about customer lifetime value. Here's how they're thinking about margin. Here's how they think about growth. Did you think about CAC this way? Right? And so you need that shepherd to be able to understand, just going beyond skin deep, to really understand what's going to drive your business. And then also understand the tech side to be able to say, is there bloat in your stack? And if we were to redesign this, not that you would do it, but if we were to redesign it, what would it look like so it's clean? And then using that diff to really understand, okay, what's the most effective way to get you from point A to point B, get some more money, and then keep going from there, right? That's the kind of iterative process you need from your shepherd.
Fantastic. I think we maybe are a minute or 2 over, and that seems like a great way to end it. So, Anil, any final thoughts?
No, fantastic discussion, a lot of interesting topics, and I could continue for quite a while on these things. Hopefully it's been helpful for most of the people who are attending, and I will let Kathy kind of conclude and close the presentation of the session.
Thank you. Please share your screen. So thank you to our presenters. It's been very interesting, and hopefully the start of a conversation, an ongoing conversation, not just a one-time thing. For our attendees, thank you for joining us. And this is not the end. This is the start of the rest of your journey towards using generative AI to achieve your goals and grow your business. And so what we would recommend is to look out for an upcoming communication from us. We'll have this webinar itself available on demand basis. So we can make that available to you in case there's others you wish to share it with. Also want to make you aware of an ebook, which we will provide to you, entitled A Roadmap for the Effective Generative AI Transition. And this was co-authored by Dr. Kaul here on the webinar, as well as Tyson Hartman, Infogain CTO. I've read it myself. I think it's quite interesting. I encourage you to read that as well. Thanks again to everyone who joined this call. And big thanks to Josh, Clarence, Anil, and Mark for leading us in this session. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you from my side as well, Josh and Clarence. Very nice session. Really enjoyed it. And looking forward to more conversations I'm sure we'll have offline.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.